this map on the screen?
Some honors are real distinctions, and others are dubious distinctions. A dubious distinction of all the countries in Central Asia and the Caucasus is that they are geographically landlocked. And not only landlocked, but in the world, there is no other concentration of landlocked countries as in Central Asia and the Caucasus. And indeed, there is even a double landlocked country there. Therefore, we are here this morning to discuss how can these countries open their doors. Now, we know there's a well-known door to the north with certain problematic elements. We know there is a door now to the east, which is ancient also. We know that there needs to be a door to the west, and there urgently needs to be also a door to the south. So the question is, how do you get the missing doors? And if you open them, what will there be? What will they carry on these routes? And how will that affect the region, its sovereignty, its economic development, and its growth as a region in the world of regions? So we're going to begin with Mamuka Tsereteli, a senior fellow at the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute at the American Foreign Policy Council. Sir.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks to everyone being here and listening to this discussion. I'll start with re-emphasizing once more that geography matters. We discussed this yesterday, and Fred started his presentation and opening of this session with that point. Geography matters, and for countries of the region to be integrated in the global economy, they need to reach global markets. They need to receive products and services from the global actors. So integration with the global economy is a priority. And there are several ways of doing this, obviously, several directions for integrational developments. But there are some restrictions, geopolitical restrictions, geographic restrictions. Priority in my small remarks, brief remarks, will be thinking about direction which is going westward, but also in the context of what are the opportunities going southward. And I think there are certain limits in both directions, but there are certain great opportunities as well. I know that my colleagues will cover some of the southern direction elements in terms of enriching markets and oceans, but I would just try to emphasize that historic connection with the Indian subcontinent that this region has to be revitalized for region to achieve full potential of its trade and economic development. And I think, obviously, the key country in this southern direction will be how Afghanistan and how Central Asian countries and other regional actors will manage developments in Afghanistan, how they will integrate their transit and transportation routes through Afghanistan in order to reach, in particular, South and Southeastern Asian markets in Japan and other countries. So reaching to that direction would be one of the big priorities. There are certain limits to it. As we know, there are political limits, security limits, geographic limits, but developments are in place. And second major direction that I'm going to talk about a little bit is obviously Western direction. It has also its own limits, which is mostly Caspian Sea, which has shallow waters and requires additional infrastructure in place in order to really achieve full potential. But if you think about how this region, particularly Central Asia, let's put aside South Caucasus right now, how this region is integrated with the world markets today, you'll see that there is obviously more flow of goods and products going westward or coming from west than going southward or coming from the south. So this, why? Because countries themselves, governments, there are significant public investments in the port infrastructure, railway infrastructure, and into to some degree in coordination, regional cooperation, which allows this westward development. By the way, I think it needs to be mentioned that last 30 years, significant investments coming from private sector as well as regional cooperation allowed the regional oil and gas resources to be exported to westward direction. And what allowed this to take place are three major components in my view. Number one is that definitely there was a private interest. And frequently we discuss these issues of transportation, access to market and so forth, from geopolitical or political point of view or what is desirable, but sometimes we ignore private sector interests. And unless you have private sector actors involved, there will be no success. So private sector interest in oil and gas development, regional cooperation between countries was absolutely crucial, and it will be the same going, dealing with this re-engagement with the world in terms of trade and transit. And the third component is geopolitical leadership. In 90s and 2000s, there was an actor who was very interested in development of the transit routes for energy going to markets, and that was United States. Unfortunately, last 10 years or so, we don't have that type of global leadership, particularly covering this particular issue, which is trade and transit. This process is mostly driven by regional actors themselves. But I think in the current geopolitical realities, European Union is the most interested actor probably in this particular issue, and maybe there will be some leadership coming from European Union. But I think I just want to stress that I consider this as a important and a very important ingredient in the success, that there is a geopolitical leadership in the process. Just one last detail, because I know we have several speakers and we need to squeeze in time. At this stage, if you think about trade from Central Asia to the rest of the world, there are more goods coming in terms of volumes of cargoes than goods going from here to the rest of the world. Let's put aside energy at this point. I'm talking about the rest of the goods. So inflow of cargoes from Black Sea, whether it's Turkey or Georgia, exceeds outflow of cargoes from Central Asia, which is interesting fact, by the way. And another detail, if you want to send, let's say, a container today from Georgia, let's say, or even Azerbaijan to China, it doesn't go through this so-called middle corridor. It usually goes through sea all around the world before it gets to the China, or vice versa. If you want to import something to South Caucasus, it doesn't go through the middle corridor. If you try to quote today cargoes, if you have something to ship to China or bring something from China, you'll get quotes based on that route, not through the middle corridor. Because it's cheaper, because it's, at this stage still, it's cheaper, and it takes, while it's longer, it just economically doesn't make sense to do otherwise. There are many other issues that we can cover going into question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We're now turning to Mr. friend Vali Kaleji from Tehran, Iran. And he is a senior research fellow at the Iran and Eurasia Research Center in Tehran. And I see he comes equipped with his own map.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. I will talk about Ukraine war and dynamic of Western, Middle, and Eastern routes in the international North-South transport corridors. As you know very well, for the first time, Russia, Iran, and India signed the agreement for International North-South Transport Corridor, INSTC, project on 16 May 2002 in the framework of multimodal transportation by sea, rail, and road. But in the last 3 years, were a turning point were a turning point in the development of INSTC. Any problem? Okay. And from 2002 to 2021, we did not witness such a dynamic in this corridor. What happened? And what factors caused this dynamic? It seems that 4 factors have been very influential. First factor is Russian war against Ukraine that has a direct impact on the transit and trade of Russia. By expanding alternative corridors, Moscow hopes to counter tightening Western economic sanction and transit restriction adopted in response to Russia's all-out assault on Ukraine. For this reason, the Russian has shown new dynamics in the last 3 years in INSTC, especially in the role of Iran, which were unprecedented in the last 3 years, 3 decades. For example, for the first time, Moscow allowed Iranian ships in the Caspian Sea to pass through the Volga River and also Volga-Don Canal. Before this, Russia did not allow foreign ships, including Iranian ships, to pass through the Volga River because the Russian authorities considered this river to be an internal waterway and, according to national security considerations, did not allow foreign ships to pass through it. Another example is Russian commitment for investment and complement of the 164-kilometer Rasht-Astara railway as the only remaining rail part of the north-south corridor. The rail project is supposed to complete it within 3 years. In addition, Russia has shown interest in investing in the port of Chabahar in the southeast of Iran to accelerate the process of trade and transit with India. We did not such this approach in previous years. This is new. The second factor is the continuation of unilateral US sanction against Iran is in administration of Joe Biden, which has caused the 2 countries under sanction, Iran and Russia, to put the expansion of trade and transit, especially in the north-south corridor, to overcome the pressure of sanctions. In this regard, we are witnessing new developments, especially in the banking sector, which has facilitated transit and trade in the north-south corridor, including making bank transfer in rubles and reals without dollars and euro, the replacement of Russian SWIFT, and integration of Russian near payment system and Iranian shut-up banking system. In the past 3 decades, we have not such cooperation in the banking and financial fields. The third factor is professional trade agreement between Iran and Eurasian Economic Union that was implemented on October 2019, that which has a very important effect on the increase of trade and transit between Iran and Armenia, Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan in the north-south corridor in the last 3 years. At present, the technical and expert negotiation to upgrade this agreement to free trade between Iran and the Union has ended. And it will most likely to be implemented at the end of this summer. As a result of this new agreement, the number of goods subject to custom tariff reduction will increase from 815 to at least 8,000. The first factor is India. After the war in Ukraine, India has become one of the important buyers of cheap Russian oil. And in other hand, tries to supply and export goods that are under Western sanction against Russia. In this regard, Russia is potentially seeking to import more than 500 products from India for key sectors, including cars, aircraft, and trains, given the Western sanction imposed over Russia has prevented them. In this process, India and Russia are discussing a free trade agreement that could deepen bilateral commercial ties that have flourished since war broke out in the Ukraine. Okay, therefore, under the influence of aforementioned factors, we have seen dynamic in the North-South corridors in the last 3 years, which have been unprecedented since 2002. But let us make a brief and quick analysis to the status of 3 main transit routes of North-South corridors. As you know, this corridor has 3 main routes, including western routes from Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, India, middle or Trans-Caspian route, Russia, Iran, India, and eastern route, Russia, Central Asia, Iran, India. In the western route of INSTC, the Republic of Azerbaijan has a key role because the land route of Astara, Baku, Dagestan play an important role in the trade and transit between Iran, Russia, and also Belarus, which is under Western sanction as a partner and ally of Russia in the war against Ukraine. However, western route of INSTC has 3 problems and challenges. First, political tensions between Tehran and Baku. Second, heavy traffic in Astara border between Iran and Azerbaijan, and also the Samur border, crossing border between Azerbaijan and Russia. And third challenge is the lack of rail connection between Iran and Azerbaijan. And as I mentioned before, the 164 kilometers Rasht-Astara railway is the only remaining rail part of the North-South corridor. But you see the map of Rasht-Astara in the western southern part of Caspian Sea. And also you can see the map of the middle routes. But in the middle and the Trans-Caspian route, Russia, Iran, India was witnessed the development of a combined transportation between Russia, Iran, and India. In this process, the first shipment from Russia to India had been sent through the, by the way, INSTC in June 2022. But these routes, maritime trade in the INSTC suffer many challenges, including the small number of ro-ro ships. The situation of Astrakhan port is that it freezes in the winter seasons and severe lack of dredging in the Volga River and Volga-Don Canal. And last paragraph is the 2 minutes. Yes. Finally, in the eastern road of INSTC, INSTC is very important because it connects the eastern and central region of Russia through Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan to the southern ports of Iran and also India and Arab countries on the southern edge of Persian Gulf. The eastern branch of INSTC was officially launched with the first train-making journey in the July 2022. However, the non-completion of Iranian Eastern Railway in an important challenge and constraint in the process of fast, easy, and high volume of goods and containers. These conditions have caused rail transit to be carried out on the eastern route of INSTC from Russia and Central Asia to Bandar Abbas, in the Strait of Hormuz, which is connected to national railway of Iran. While Bandar Abbas is 680 kilometers distance to Chabahar port in the southeastern of Iran. And if rail access to Chabahar is provided, transit from India to Afghanistan, Central Asia, and eastern region of Russia will be done from a shorter distance at a lower cost and at a faster speed. To overcome this challenge, Iran is building 628 kilometers railway project. You can see this map from Chabahar. Yes, that's finished. To connect Chabahar to Port Zaidan, and also 1,050 kilometers from Chabahar to Sarax in the border of Iran and Turkmenistan border. I hope that this picture of comprehensive picture about North-South corridor can help you to better understanding from the North-South corridor at the last 3 years. Thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as we continue to unlock this Rubik's Cube, we turn to Mr. Bakhrom Radjabov from Uzbekistan. He runs the office of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation in Tashkent, and I think will offer a rather different perspective.
Right. Thank you very much, Fred. So glad to see your fellow friends here in this room. There's already started a great presentation by Mamuka and then following speakers. So you already have the vision on the transportation corridors in Central Asia. I would just like to maybe emphasize some other points out there, which is, from the perspective of Uzbekistan, I would point out probably 3 major things for now, and then we can, of course, follow up on the question and answers and discussions. First thing, of course, what has happened for the last 6-7 years is the integration, regional integration in Central Asia, and everybody acknowledges that changes in Uzbekistan were the main driver for the regional integration. Of course, I'm pretty sure you already know that, and this is the first point, the connectivity within the region has increased. So the checkpoints that were previously closed, they were opened, and for example, with Tashkent and Dushanbe for 25 years, there was no air flights, direct air flights from Tashkent to Dushanbe. This is now the case. The same with our Kyrgyz friends and so on. So basically, the first point of the new Uzbek government was to reinforce the integration in Central Asia, to make this region more resilient and self-sufficient, because then these trade transport corridors, they facilitate, of course, the trade in the region. And the follow-up steps were also taken, to also make the region more resilient to the external shocks that have happened. The first one was pandemic, and then the war in Ukraine, and et cetera, you all know that. Then this is number one thing. Number two is then the neighboring countries. Of course, the first and foremost was Afghanistan, and as you know, in 2011 already was the railway route from Hayraton to Afghanistan, and then through Afghanistan to Southeast Asia, to South Asia. It was already there, but then new points, to increase the role of Trans-Afghan corridor, which is going to be the shortest route from Central Asia to South Asia to Southeast Asia. And this was in line with the priority of also the Uzbek government to get the access to the growing trade market, to growing markets in the Southeast Asian region. and with growing India, of course, and other countries out there. So this was, of course, even despite the changes in Afghanistan, was the priority, and still is the priority for the country to unlock this locked region, to basically support the economic development in the region. This is number two. Number three, Uzbekistan was trying to look for, and actually as a whole region, we were pushed to look for alternatives. And of course, if you look at the numbers, for example, the one I received from Azerbaijan about the Trans-Caspian route, and if you look at the numbers in the first quarter 2022 and you compare to the first quarter of 2021, then the increase of the cargo, the goods through the corridor has increased for 123%. So this, of course, was due to the issues with and disruption of trade links and transportation routes through the northern corridor that was used to the large extent before the war. But Uzbekistan was looking also at the so-called the Organization of Turkic States, and on the neighbors also like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and the other members of of course, Turkey is one of the important partners on the way. So we were looking on the trade turnover there, and then developing the transportation links as an alternative, as a balance, because the main idea here is to diversify transportation links and to assure this stability and balance, because we already experienced, it was not a pleasant experience, of course, as you know, we experienced the disruption of the traditional trade routes and transportation links. So then the numbers here show that, in fact, if you look at the cost of logistics here, first of all, due to the pandemic and the war, the increase first number is that the turnover of the trade for these Turkic states is like 40%. It's more than 100 billion US dollars. But then if you look at on all these disruptions, then you see that the cost of logistics and transport is 60% for the goods of the region of the country. So then it's very high, especially, basically it's very expensive, to deliver any goods now at the moment to the region, to Central Asia, like 60%. It's, it's incomparable. It's really high. Then to decrease this, so to make it more faster, cheaper to deliver goods to the region, to this landlocked region, then this certain policy should be out there. And another thing, very interesting fact, but I mean maybe not unusual, that on the turnover, thank you. On the turnover of the trade, if you look again on the numbers, then even if compare with other the organizations, integration unions like ASEAN and others, then for the Turkic states, the number of the internal trade among us is just 5%. And we basically trade with outside world more than inside. Then, well, it's not bad or good, it's just a fact, but then it makes us also vulnerable to the external shocks. So these 3 points were the main. I mean, for the start, I think I can stop here, but those were the priorities. We, of course, can speak more about the details and issues out there and about some research ongoing, but I would stop here, I think, Fred, and then maybe we can.
Thank you very much. I think all of you members of the CAMCA network should be proud of the fact that this program can be mounted from within with two members of the network showing such expertise. Our next speaker, also a network member, Yerali. He's not just writing about it and studying it, he's doing it. And he is the former chairman of the board of the Aktau Marine North Terminal and a board member of the port of Aktau. So please give us your perspective.
Yep, thank you, Dr. Starr. I'm pleased to be here. So in my topic, I would like to more focus on the middle corridor on which I have been working in the past. Of course, the traditional way of transporting goods and services from thank you, Dr. Starr. So I would like to focus on my today's topics more on the middle corridor, the one which I have been working in the past. We have successfully implemented in Kazakhstan, where in the middle corridor we implied the transportation of goods from China, transiting via Central Asia, Kazakhstan, to port of Baku, and later to the global markets. Of course, the traditional way of transporting goods was the northern corridor, which from China it was going to Russia and further to the European states. Well, when we started the expansion of port of Aktau, maybe in 2014, we have been implying that this port will be for the transit of goods from China and through Kazakhstan and later to the global markets. But since February 2022, everything has substantially changed. So in terms of just for transiting, what we have been doing became a critical issue for our domestic, actual and regional goods and products. So we have in the Aktau Marine North Terminal, we have doubled the capacity of the port of Aktau in terms of bulk cargo. We have tripled the capacity of the Aktau port in terms of the grain products. But we didn't expect that there will be such kind of mass flow of goods and services that we are facing now, actually, how the Aktau port faces now. In current situation, we have serious challenges, of course. In the current context, the Aktau port can handle the current capacities and current issues that we have, but the problem comes in the port of Aktau, or port of Baku, where there is a substantial issue with the grain handling equipment and the rolling stock in Azerbaijan, which cannot handle the current capacities. Of course, we have also the infrastructure going from Azerbaijan to Poti or even the Halkalaki. Both of them have serious infrastructure, rail infrastructure issues. Plus, they don't have enough rolling stock, and there is a need for an upgrade in the port of Poti. Plus, I think the major maybe the problem in this route is the vessels in the Caspian. So we don't have enough capacity with the vessels that can handle the current volume. Just think the northern corridor would handle annually more than 20 million tons of cargo. Whereas we, when started the expansion of the Aktau port, we were thinking about only 1 million. And given this substantial ratio, of course, I mean, all this, our governments and the regional countries have to maybe cooperate, expand, and if there is an opportunity to attract more of the international funding, just believe that we are handling maybe only 5% of the whole volume that is possible in the market.
Thank you very much. Just a further note on the CAMCA network. The person who has devoted the last 10 years of his life to developing the new port south of Baku is also a CAMCA network member. That's Talay Ziadov, who is busy doing that right now and couldn't be with us because of it. Okay, responses from any to any.
Yeah,
and
maybe
then we'll turn to you all.
Maybe I'll start with the brief comments that I think it's important to realize that there are issues of infrastructure in transportation, but there are also issues of management and coordination and like a soft sort of infrastructure that are these are important elements. Most of the ports, if you look at data at least, most of the ports in Caspian or Black Sea are operating under capacity. They have more capacity to ship than they ship, and so that relates to multiple things that was mentioned here. It's some of the bottlenecks on the Caspian in particular. The flotilla is not providing enough capacity to ship over the Caspian, but also railway-related issues that was mentioned here. So I think it's important that, as in my initial remarks, I made a point that if cost of coordination or cost of kind of moving things in general through this corridor is prohibitive for businesses, they will try to look elsewhere or just stop doing business. So I think it's important that countries coordinate between them, and there are some efforts. We know this so-called Trans-Caspian International Trade Route that has now secretariat and organizational structure that tries to coordinate tariffs and movements and so forth. These type of efforts are absolutely essential to make sure that things are moving smoothly. And another element is also that this is very market-driven process as well. You know, let's say prices on fertilizers would affect whether it's what type of movement, what type of volumes of movements will take place, whether it's Turkmenbashi or Aktau or any other port. So this is market-driven process that we need to kind of pay attention to that as well.
Thank you. Asad.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, but the issue comes with the upgrade of the current infrastructure in terms of rolling stock and rail infrastructure and everything else. So everything what we are discussing, we need the funding. And you know that the Fed had increased the funding at almost 5%. So the businesses are getting a very, very expensive funding at the moment. And there is not enough sources of attracting this funding. We don't have lots of banks or, you know, even private banks. We have only international development institutions, which funding doesn't work quite quickly, you know. And we need, as a business, we need very, very quick decision making, not long-term decision makings.
Vali?
No.
The floor is open, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, please.
Good morning, I'm Fariz Ismailzadeh from ADA University, Baku, Azerbaijan. I have two very short questions. First, about the impact of China on East-West corridor, middle corridor, how much China is investing into it, how much is China spending money on it. And second, about the new Zangezur corridor, which goes through liberated areas of Karabakh, linking Azerbaijan potentially with Turkey. How much potential do you see there? Thank you.
I can
Paris.
start. Okay, go.
Big person, Paris. No, you can.
I can just, maybe I'll make comment on it, just my opinion about both issues very briefly. Number one, China's investments and focus on Central Asia was with the aimed at European markets, of course, through Kazakhstan to Russia and so forth. Now everyone is readjusting, but there are limits, as we discussed, in infrastructure and other elements. So as we know, there's more limited investments in South Caucasus than in Central Asia from China. That may change, but frankly, I don't see major efforts. We see some diplomatic efforts, but not actual investment. On the second issue, my personal view, Fariz, is that this will be very important for particularly Azerbaijan to have access to Nakhchivan and kind of have access, rail access and road access to Nakhchivan. In terms of thinking about connecting to Turkey and thinking of it as a big kind of alternative infrastructure route, I think there are, again, geographic limits and some other limits, and kind of commercial limits as well. What type of cargoes are we talking about in terms of volumes to justify investments commercial? If there is a public decision and strategic decision of our Azerbaijani government or other actors to invest public funds in that infrastructure, that's possible. But at this stage, commercially, I don't see that's just to be justified.
Quick comment?
Yes, thank you very much for this. Okay. You hear? No? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for your question. I believe that the revival of old Soviet Union railroad in the southern of Caucasus, from Julfa in Iran to Nakhchivan, and can help to both corridors. middle corridor and north-south corridor. We try to help to accelerate this process because this railway was the main route of transit between Iran and Soviet Union. And unfortunately, after the First Karabakh War, Iranian rail connection to South Caucasus cut and unfortunately continue up to present time. Therefore, the revival of this railway connected Julfa to Nakhjavan to Yerevan, and also Yerevan, Julfa, Merkri, and Hovardis to Baku and to Moscow. Therefore, this helped to both of corridor of middle corridor and north-south corridor. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I fully agree with Mamuka Tsereteli about that China, for example, it's 90% of goods transported through sea by ships. 80% of transporting China goods to Europe, it is going through Central Asia. In 2019, when I began my jobs as Secretary General ACO, China trade with European Union member states was 700 billion more. Last year, it is more than 1 trillion. So it is growing. But when it is a conflict, Russia-Ukraine conflict, this middle corridor became again very important. It is rising. But EBRD, some reports showing it is only 4% of goods transported from China to Europe going through this corridor. Because it is expensive, and second, it is a lot of barrier, not only management issue, but main tariffs, different crossing procedure, and so on. That's why last year in October, in connectivity conference, EU Central Asia in Samarkand, there, Mr. Borrell participated there, came to conclusion that it is needed strategy, first of all. And in 2nd June, it was summit European Union Central Asia in Cholpon-Ata in Kyrgyzstan, and there was main points of discussion of our leaders. It was transport corridor, Trans-Caspian corridor. And by estimation, EBRD 2030 will be 300 containers transported through this corridor. It is, but last year, 1.7 million. It is 2 times more than 21, but nevertheless, it is more needed. And they're estimated $18.5 billion investment for developing this corridor. China is interested for developing this corridor and financing for this corridor. But European Union announced it in 21, the ambitions program Global Gate 300 as a counterpart to One Belt, One Road. That's why my questions to you, that's, what do you think? It is important conjunction One Belt, One Road with the Global Gate of European Union, because Mr. Tokayev, distinguished president of Kazakhstan on the summit on Cholpon-Ata, said that Kazakhstan is agreed for connecting One Belt, One Road to Trans-Caspian corridor. What we should do, I am proposing such, establish some dialogue platform for such, to make possibility for conjunction and to take out such prejudice, because there is such negative on Western discourse, negative attitude to One Belt, One Road. By I witnessed what constructed Chinese in Tajikistan, connecting Dushanbe with the Khojand rail autobahn. Very nice, very perfect. We in Central Asia, for example, in Uzbekistan, we have not such kind of transport autobahn. That's why I think it will be more wiser, because China will rise the trade turnover with European Union, because it is, with Russia, it is 8 times more than with Russia. Nevertheless, but that's why I think it is timely. And I would like to hear your opinion, but I'm ready to cooperate with you on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to point out, again, in the name of CAMCA pride, you're not a former fellow, but you are a father of a CAMCA team member. And so it's an honor to have the former Secretary General of SCO among us as a family member.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I think sometimes we are forgetting some of the geographic limits. that you are absolutely right. There was a 1.5 million TEUs, containers shipped through from China to Europe. But if you take even like 5% of that, current flotilla capacity cannot handle that. What you referred to, this was gross numbers of trade, and out of that, only fraction goes through land, and out of that, only fraction can go through Caspian because of, again, geographic limits. Port draft, the depths of the ports are very limited in Caspian, as you know. And so there's a USAID report from last year that covers very interesting analysis about kind of how much really Caspian can handle, or how much infrastructure is in Caspian. Kazakhstan added 2 more vessels, as I understand, from last year, but it's only increased the capacity by 15,000, 20,000 tons, because vessels are not as big as oceanic vessels in Caspian. So there are this type of limits. I think Chinese understand it well, what type of capacity to Trans-Caspian will have. And they're considering different options. Obviously, there is still, Alat port has 15 million ton capacity, and Turkmenbashi has 18 million, and Aktau still has additional capacity. So that can be, more cargoes can be moved, but a lot of efforts needs to be made. And somebody needs to invest money. Private sector is not interested at this point because it's costly. So there needs to be some kind of additional sources of investments, whether it's public or private, that will make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, Kazakhstan is an active participant of One Belt, One Road, but I would like to highlight one important thing. Kazakhstan is the only country which has participated in One Belt, One Road without Chinese funding. Most of the, participants of this program usually use Chinese funding to become part of that. But Kazakhstan is the only one who never used any of the Chinese money. And with China, we have developed the biggest transborder hub, Khorgos, which is actually right now can handle more than 1 million TEUs per year. It's a massive, maybe almost $1 billion investment. Plus, as a part of One Belt, One Road, we have expanding more than 2,000 kilometers of railways infrastructure and network, which is a substantial amount for the country. So we have upgraded particularly more than 15% or 20% of our railway capacity. Plus, I'm not, like I already mentioned about the expansion of the port of Aktau and other logistical facilities that we have invested as a part of our agreement with China in terms of One Belt and One Road. But we haven't used Chinese money.
Well, unfortunately, our time is out, but what we have not been able to do today, and it should be done, that is the impact of these the war in Ukraine on these trade patterns. In general, this entire discussion has been driven by basically government policy. And as Mamuka Tsereteli has reminded us, in the end, the question is, what do business people think? Who uses this? Who will use it? And for what products and where? That hasn't entered deep into this discussion, which has been dominated with a kind of geopolitical aura. And I think it's probably time to move beyond that. And let me just end with a little detail, which I've already shared with some of you. When Babur conquered India and was sitting there in Agra, and one day he was dreaming of his home back in the Fergana Valley. And he was dreaming of the beautiful melons, which indeed are beautiful melons from the Fergana Valley. And he asked his chef, is there any way that we could send someone and get some? Well, that's a long way off, the Fergana Valley from India. His chef disappeared, comes back an hour later with a melon. Now, that melon was not brought there through some route that was governmentally structured. It was done by private enterprise, and it was working smoothly Babur didn't know about it. So it seems to me, if we could get back to that kind of situation that prevailed in the 16th century of functional, working, economy-driven, not politics-driven trade, will be a long step further down the road than we are today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much to our panelists. We're going to be adjourned.